Hey there, I'm Jesse Fox Mayshark, and this is an archived interview from Headlights, Voices from the Progressive South. Headlights is a production of the Progressive South, a nonprofit media platform dedicated to amplifying progressive voices and values across the southern United States. You can find more information about us, including how to support our efforts, at our website, theprogressivesouth.org. We're on a summer hiatus from Headlights while we work on adding some new features and content, but in the meantime, I wanted to highlight some of our interviews from the past year for anyone who missed them. Of course, you can find all our prior episodes, 57 so far, in the archives. This week, we're replaying an interview from last summer with Miami writer and environmentalist Andrew Otazo. Otazo is a Cuban-American writer and communications strategist who was born and grew up in Miami. After living in other parts of the country, including Boston and Washington, D.C., he decided there was literally no place at all like home. His resume is diverse and hard to summarize. After graduating from high school, he spent 2 years as a cadet at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, before earning a degree in political science from the University of Miami, where he also earned a master's in international administration. He has at various points worked in a local congressional office, as an intern at the U.S. State Department, as an assistant to Mexican President Felipe Calderón, in strategic communication roles with corporate and nonprofit organizations, and now as founder and CEO of Aero Communications, which works with clients in the private, nonprofit, and political sectors. He's also the founder and author of a multi-pronged project called the Miami Creation Myth, a book, website, and social media account that subjects his beloved and complicated hometown to searching analysis and scathing satire, leavened with deep and irrepressible affection. And he's a one-man environmental cleanup crew. He has personally removed about 15 tons of trash from Miami's mangrove swamps, and in 2019 he completed the Miami Marathon carrying 30 pounds of that trash on his back to raise awareness and money for local environmental efforts. We talked about all of that and how his sense of Miami has evolved along the way. So, Seth, let's go to the tape. So, Andrew Otazo, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, I have been in Miami now literally for 36 hours. That's my sum total of direct experience. But I think like a lot of Americans, maybe most Americans, for most of my life, I have had an idea of Miami, and you can imagine what that has been derived from TV shows, movies, and pop music and so forth. I mean, I think it's one of these places that occupies space in the American imagination. So to start off with kind of a big picture question, because I think this is something that you get at in various ways in your work. What do the rest of us just like not get about Miami? What do people who think of it as the place of, you know, Miami Vice or Miami Beach or Miami Sound Machine, missing about the reality of what the city is and how it works?
So those aspects of Miami that you just mentioned are part of the city, but they're a very small part of the city, like 5% or less, I would estimate. For people who aren't familiar with the city, the way that, you know, people living here for a while or who were born and raised here are, I would say that first and foremost, Miami is a world unto itself. It is the capital of Latin America. It is 70% Latino. Its culture is very heavily influenced, not just by, the Latino population that living here, but also Haitian Americans, people from all over the world, really. It's a very international city, but also it is a city that is designed to be consumed. So it is not a city designed for its residents at all. It is a city like those aspects that you mentioned are like fetishized versions of Miami that are marketed to people to come here and to basically spend their money and leave. And the entire city is built around them. So we don't have a very good public transit system. Our rent is out of control. We're missing tens of thousands of units of housing. It's very difficult to live in Miami unless you are part of the very wealthy class here. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle for most people, and most of the economy is designed around um, service. So it's a service economy, servicing those tourists that come here. Lately, within the last several years, it's switched more to crypto and finance and all these other things. But that's really more part of Miami's very long history of being a very fraudulent city. So, you can go back to its very foundations, its boom and bust cycle, its real estate bust, especially. Um, Miami's has always been full of people trying to like get one over the next guy and just trying to make a buck off other people. So, this is just the latest iteration of this. Instead of trying to sell people land in the Everglades, we're selling them crypto. So that's very, very, very brief description of Miami.
Well, and so you grew up here, obviously, and you moved away and lived in various other places for a little while, and then obviously decided you wanted to come back. I'm curious what, I think a lot of times when people move away from a place, in a way that place becomes clearer to them from a distance. And because Miami is so distinctive and unique,
Yeah.
no place else you can go that is like it in so many different ways. I guess, what did you realize about it when you moved away, and what was it that drew you back?
I realized a lot of things. So I'm Cuban American. I'm a white presenting Latino, and I grew up thinking I was white. And I thought that my upbringing was standard for the United States. And then I went to West Point, out of all places, for college, and that was just the largest culture shock you could possibly imagine. And I was sometimes violently informed that I was not part of the whatever majority culture. Um, and that gave me like a big shock for sure. And it taught me that my upbringing and um, I guess my lodestones are very different from most people in this country, and there's people that can appreciate that and people that don't, to put it lightly. And it it made me realize that Miami's, and again, it's not just that one experience with West Point, but having lived in Boston, DC, traveled all over the world. I lived in Brazil, I lived in Argentina. Um, I've realized how special this place is to me. So even though as I stated at the outset, Miami's not built for Miamians, it's to my sometimes my detriment. It's the only place that I feel comfortable. It's the only place where I can be myself fully. And so it has this deep cultural draw for people who were raised here, that leave and they feel like it's almost like gravity, like they need to come back to be fully themselves. Some people don't. They leave and they're happy, and they're happy to come back on the holidays, but a lot of us feel this draw back to the city because it is so unique.
And one thing that stands out to me about I got a copy of your book,
Oh,
an autographed
well,
copy
thank you.
at
That's right.
Books and Books bookstore here the other day,
Mhm.
and I won't pretend to get all of the references by any means.
Yeah,
One thing that strikes me about it is that this is very much a book uh, for and about people who are here. Like, it's not designed to be a guide for the rest of the world.
right, right.
But so you talk about this as a city that's kind of in a lot of ways not for its residents. You've been very critical of the power structures here and the way that the city is kind of run. I guess, why is that? Like, why? Because you would think, I mean, city governments can be good or bad for a lot of different reasons, but their kind of core function, theoretically at least, is to serve their actual residents. Um, if that's not always the case in Miami, why is that, and how, like, who are those forces attuned to serving, if not the people who are actually here?
Yeah, so that's a very complicated question. And to get into that, you have to go into history and urban planning and just the power structure that you find here. But since it's upset, since it's I'll say it again. Since its inception, Miami has been an extractive city to the people living here. So if you go back to its, again, people have been living here for thousands of years before Europeans arrived. But since Miami was founded as a city officially within the United States, it was built by Bahamians and other, people from, other Black populations from the South, other Black islander populations, or from around the Caribbean, and they, they it's really messed up. So their populations were used. They were counted as part of Miami's official population in order to hit a certain threshold to be considered a municipality in the United States. But as soon as that was done, they were completely disenfranchised. So, for example, they built Miami Beach, but it was a sundown law, or is a sundown town. So Black people were not allowed within city limits after sunset without a pass from their employers, or they could be lynched. So from its very, very inception, there's been a class of people that have benefited from extracting, for lack of a better term, value from people farther down the totem pole. And, up until the 1960s and the 70s and the 80s, this was largely a white upper class, right? But then you have this massive influx of first Cuban-Americans, well, then just Cubans. There weren't really Cuban-American Cubans, followed by all sorts of other populations from around Latin America, Dominicans, Colombians, Venezuelans. And what happened was that you had the top of that socioeconomic pyramid, you had the white population at the very top. They left Miami. They didn't want anything to do with us. But this new Latino upper class just kind of slotted right into it, and the rest of the pyramid remained unchanged. And that's really, and along with the wonderful cultural aspects that I love so much about the city, there's a darker side to this culture that was kind of imported from Latin America into Miami, which is an even more, if possible, extractive sense or culture where you don't have I have to remind people that Miami is a very young city, and that it's not like Boston or Chicago or DC that has centuries of civic culture. It doesn't. But what you did see was an importation of this culture from Latin America that's even, that is always trying to get something, is always on some scam, essentially. So if you look at the rule of law in Latin America, it's mostly laughable. And it's a powerful interest at the very top that control everything. And that's very similar to here. And the most powerful interests here are financiers and developers. This is an economy that's built around, yes, service and tourism, but also real estate. From its very start, it's been real estate. So, these interests basically capture our local officials, and they do their bidding, and everything. It's just also, Miami is one of the most fraudulent cities in the United States. Like, it is the capital of healthcare fraud in this country, and political fraud, and like, you name it, we got it. So, that's part of it. And then there's an ugly side to our political culture here, which is, you know, essentially you have you have these dynasties who keep getting voted into office. And the people who vote for them do it out of habit, really. And it's kind of just like, oh, they're one of us, right? So we're going to keep voting them in, and we're not going to, vote someone. There's also, once you smack on the label of socialism or communism, like, to anything like that's remotely progressive, say an affordable housing program, or anything along the effects that would start to address Miami's most systemic problems, then it just like dies. So it's very easy to just kill proposals for like more public transit, for example, or And it's all local interest, right? All politics is local. This is hyper local. So yeah, it's a confluence of so many different factors that make Miami a city that, it works if you want to stay in, downtown or Brickell or go to Miami Beach or go to Wynwood or Edgewater, basically anything east of I-95. But if you live west of I-95 or you live toward the north or the south, then, you're kind of screwed.
So, tell me about the Miami creation myth. What prompted you to kind of start that project? Was it a way for yourself to kind of try to figure out the city and come to terms with it? And what kind of reception have you had to all of that from people here?
Well, I'll start with the reception first. It's been wonderful. Um, I won an award for the book. It's an International Latino Book Award for Best Fantasy Novel. So I got, national recognition, which was nice, and it's sold really well in Miami. It's we have an independent bookstore here called Books and Books, and they're really the anchor of the local literary scene, and it's the best-selling independently published book they've ever sold. So that's great. So, the reception has been really good. Um, and I think it's because I wrote it from a place of, I come from a certain culture in Miami, a Cuban-American culture, but that's not the only culture of Miami. There's so many different ones. There's the native cultures, the Seminole and the Miccosukee. There's the Black culture, which can be subdivided so many different ways into Haitian, Islander, Trinidadian, whatever. You have, a large undocumented population here. You have Colombians and as well as Argentines, Mexicans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted to represent as many of those cultures as possible. And in order to do that, I had to partner with members of these different cultures to help check me and help me course correct on these different chapters dealing with their communities because I'm not a member of their community. So that's why it took me 7 years to write because of these different collaborations. And it's written in 11 languages and dialects with footnotes in English. So, I speak three languages. I speak English, Spanish, and Portuguese. I don't speak Miccosukee, and I don't speak Haitian Creole, and I don't speak Jamaican Patois. But I know people who do, and they help me put that together. But basically, the concept around the Miami creation myth is that, just like the Greeks or the Romans, the Egyptians have their own mythic cycles, their own legends and creation myths. I did that but for Miami because it is such a globally unique city, like you said, like New Orleans, that it deserved its own like mythic cycle. And so that gave me an opportunity to explore its history and its culture and in a satirical, humorous manner. And just, everything that is in the book is a reflection, as all satire is, of reality, but from a very Miamian lens, because if you look at how Miami is portrayed in mass media, whether it's the newest Grand Theft Auto video game coming out or Miami Vice or whatever, that's not the Miami most people live. Like we don't experience any of that nonsense. But I think that's why I've received a good reception is because like this, like you said, this was a book written for Miamians from someone who understands our city.
Your mangrove swamp cleanup project, what did that arise from? And also, in the broader sense, I mean, Miami is clearly one of the most environmentally vulnerable major cities in the country. I mean, it always has been because of
Hmm.
hurricanes and flooding, even before we get to the modern era of climate change. Uh, so I guess how do you see the levels of environmental awareness and action here, given all of the threats that the city obviously faces?
Right. So I've been exploring the mangroves since I was 13 years old. They're a habitat that I absolutely love. And it was actually my partner who prompted me to begin picking it up. I took her out there years and years and years ago, and she saw the trash, and she's to just like, oh, why don't you start picking this up? And I was like, no, there's just going to be more trash next tide. There's no point in doing this. But I don't know. Eventually, I just got so upset that nobody was doing anything, that I just started picking up trash. And 31,000 pounds later, here I am. Um, my work in the mangroves is sometimes a reflection of I don't know what else to do. There's so many systemic problems, right, that are facing my city. I can't do much about sea level rise, or if we get smacked by a Category 5 hurricane. I can't do much about what's going on at a national level regarding, say, degradation of the Everglades with alligator Alcatraz, or just, the horrible things happening to so many people in this country who are undocumented or even who are documented. I can't do anything about that, but I can go into the swamp. I can pick up trash, and I can raise awareness of this issue here in South Florida. And I think I've done a decent job of doing that, along with many other individuals and organizations who are also doing it. And the really nice thing about this work is that, one, I can just kind of do it and see the effects, like the positive effects of my work on a daily basis. And two, it's not political. It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on. I've talked to literally monarchists to anarchists, and they're all on the same page. Yeah, we shouldn't have trash in the mangroves. So that's really refreshing. And I've seen a growth in awareness in Miami of the importance of protecting these environments, not just the mangroves, but the Everglades and Biscayne Bay and all these different habitats that are interconnected over the years. So that's been really nice to see, at the very least.
You talked about how young Miami is as a city, which I was honestly struck going back and looking at the population census for Miami, that there were only like 5,000 people in Miami in 1910, I think.
Right.
By the time you get to 1950, there's, I don't know, a 250,000, and now there's what, 2.8 million people in Dade County overall. So, as you say, maybe civil society hasn't, in a way, been able to keep pace with just that massive growth. And you've been engaged in various kinds of political and communications and organizing efforts. Is that changing? Are there the roots anywhere of a stronger civic and civil society that might be able to grapple with all the things that the city is facing? Like, is there hope there?
Um, that's a very good question. It's a very good question. First of all, you bring up a great point. There's more people living in Florida in 1491 than there were in 1900. For some perspective. Um, Here's the thing about Miami civic culture and about our systemic issues generally. The solutions to these problems are not going to come from the top down. They're not going to come from our political class, because even, there are politicians in the city that I do agree with and I do support, like the mayor of our county, Danielle Living Cobb. I think she's doing the best she can. She's doing good work. But you have a structure where you have 30 something municipalities in this county, and each one has their own commission and their own mayor and their own interests, and they often don't align. And so they don't collaborate well often. I think that at a base level, the change that we need, I don't know, obviously, I have no idea if Miami is going to get its act together, and be able to solve its most pressing issues, which are existential, related to climate change. Not to mention income inequality and housing and transit and all sorts of other problems that we have here. But I can tell you that if we do, it'll come from the bottom up. It's going to be at the grassroots level. It's going to be a demand, an insistence, on our elected leaders that if they don't address these issues, then they're going to get booted out of office. I don't know when that's going to happen. I would love it to happen. I'd love for it to happen soon, but it's a very entrenched system. So that's, if I wasn't an optimist, then I wouldn't be living in the city, and I certainly wouldn't be doing my environmental and civic and political work in it. But you know, I don't I don't know. Maybe it's a Sisyphean task. I don't know. We'll find out together.
So I guess to wrap up, I would just ask for people who do come to Miami, because lots of people from outside Miami come to it, or come to Fort Lauderdale, or come to the surrounding area. Is there anything that you would encourage people to do to kind of break out of those obvious touristy bubbles, like to get some sense of sort of what the real Miami is? How should people approach this city?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to, Miami is so rich culturally, and I do encourage anyone who wants to visit here to get out of that bubble, which is mostly along the East Coast. Sure, go to Miami Beach and go to, I don't know, Wynwood. They're great, but also check out Little Haiti. Go to historic Overtown. Go down to Homestead. That is a completely different. It's a drive, but it's worth it. It's agricultural. It has incredible fruit markets. It's just a really awesome place. Check out our nature. Go, scuba diving, or not scuba diving, if you don't have a license. If you don't have a what's it called? Well, I guess a license. Go snorkeling in Biscayne Bay. Go down to visit Biscayne Bay National Park. Go out to the Everglades. Walk the Anhinga Trail. See more of Miami than just what's in the tourist photos, right? You go out to Doral. That's like the center of Venezuelan American culture in the United States. It's incredible. Check out local spots. Don't freaking don't go to Bayside Marketplace, which is just like this just depressing 1980s era, mall. Go, patronize local retailers and restaurants and check them out, and go to a Ventanita, get some Cuban coffee. It'll keep you awake for days. So yeah, just go outside of the normal well-trodden paths in Miami, and you're gonna find incredible stuff.
All right. I think that's a great place to wrap up. So, Andrew Otazo, thanks so much for talking. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
And that wraps up this archive interview. Remember, you can find any episodes you've missed right here in our archives. We'll talk to you soon.